Yesterday, just perchance, I was browsing, try to find some message through the somehow Sister Kim's sharing came back to me of the keyword was pride flashed through a conversation she had with Tim and I quite a while ago. And this morning I saw YouTube try to listen to something, and old teaching by dear brother Derek Prince came back. To let me see what's the title. Yeah, it's pride versus humility. The two parts to this teachings. As in the beginning of this teaching, one listen to it. But the Lord reminded me to find the article that Sister Kim shared and read it. So here we are. The title of the article, The Demonic Stronghold on the Characteristic of Pride. One of the foremost experts on the depths of the human spirit, Saint Isaac the Syrian, said in his 41st homily, the one who has come to a realization of his sin is higher than the one who raises the dead through prayer. Whereas being able to see his own self is higher than the one who has been granted the vision of angels. It is for the purpose of self-knowledge that we will examine the matter we have started in the title: pride, egotism, and vanity, to which we can add haughtiness, arrogance, and conceit, are all different varieties of one basic manifestation, turning towards oneself. Out of all these words, two have the most concrete meaning: vanity and pride. According to the lander, they are like a youth, a man, seed, and bread, beginning and end. The symptoms of vanity, this initial sin, are intolerance of criticism, a thirst for praise, a search for easy paths, and a constant orientation towards others. What will they say? How will it appear? What will they think? Vanity sees the audience approaching from afar and makes the wrathful, affectionate, the irresponsible serious, and the distracted concentrated, gluttons temperate, and so on. All this as long as there are observers around. The same orientation towards our audience explains the sin of self-justification, which often creeps unnoticeably even into our confession. I'm no more sinful than the rest. Only insignificant sins. I've not killed anyone or stole anything. The demon of vanity is overjoyed, says St. John of the Lander, seeing our virtues increase. The more success we have, the more food for vanity. When I keep a fast, I am vain. When I hide my spiritual labors, I'm a whim over my piety. If I dress pleasingly, I'm a whim. If I put on old clothes, I become even vainer. If I begin to speak, I'm consumed by vanity. If I keep silent, I become still vainer. No matter how you turn, there's a prickly plant. It always has its thorns sticking upward. As soon as a kind feeling or a sincere movement rises in a man's heart, immediately there appears a vain backward look in oneself. As these most precious movements of the soul disappear, melting like a snow under the sun. They melt, which means they die. Therefore, because of vanity, the best in us dies. Thus we kill ourselves with vanity and we replace a real, simple, and good life with the phantoms. Increasing vanity gives rise to pride. Pride is a superrealm self-confidence, and the rejection of all that is not of self. It is a source of rage, cruelty, and malice. It is refusal to accept God's help. It is a demonic stronghold. It is an iron curtain between ourselves and God. Ibam Piman. It is an enmity towards God. It is the origin of all sin. It is present in every sin. Every sin constitutes a willing yielding one's soul to one's wise, a conscious floating of God's law, audacity against God. The one who is subject to pride is desperately in need of God, for no man can save such a one, the lander. Where does this wise come from? How does it begin? What does it feed on? Through what stage does it pass in its development? What are the characteristics by which one can recognize it? The lantern is particularly important because a proud person usually does not see his sin. A wise elder once counseled one of his monastics to shun pride. The lantern, blinded by his intellect, replied, "Forgive me, father, but there is absolutely no pride in me." The wise elder said to him, "There is no better proof of your pride, child, than such an answer. In any case, if a person found it hard to ask forgiveness of others, if he is easily offended and mistrustful, if he is covetous and judgmental of others, then all of these are undoubtedly signs of pride." In the homily against the pagans of St. Athanasius of the Great, there are the following words: "Men have fallen to self-desire, preferring to contemplate themselves rather than divinity." The brief definition reveals the essence of pride. Man, for whom until now the center and the object of desire was gone, has turned away from him. He has fallen into self-desire. He can't allow himself more than God, and he has preferred self-contemplation to divine contemplation. In our life, this turning towards self-contemplation and self-desire have become part of our nature and can often be seen in the mighty instinct for self-preservation, both in our earthly and our spiritual life. Just as a cancerous growth often begins with a bruise or a continuous irritation of a certain spot, so the spiritual illness of pride often begins either with a sudden shock, for example, due to some calamity, or from a continuous massaging of one's ego due to success, good fortune, or the constant exhibition of one's talents, etc. Often you are dealing with a so-called temperamental individual who is passionate, talented, and easily fascinated. Such a person is like an erupting volcano with its ceaseless activity preventing both God and man from getting near him. He's full of himself, totally absorbed in himself, and intoxicated with himself. He does not see or feel anything except his burning talent, from which he derives great enjoyment and satisfaction. One can hardly do anything with such people until they become played out, until the volcano becomes extinguished. Such is the danger for all talented and gifted people. Talent should be balanced by deep spirituality. Otherwise, in reverse cases, in situations of great sorrow, there is the same result. The person becomes totally absorbed in the misfortune. In his eyes, the surrounding world becomes dull and dark. He cannot think or speak of anything except his sorrow. He wallows in it and finally holds onto it, and the only thing left to him, and the only reason in life. Often, this turning towards oneself becomes developed in people who are quiet, submissive, and taciturn, whose personal life had been suppressed from childhood. The suppressed subjectivity compensates itself by engendering a tendency towards egocentrism in psychological types. In the most diverse manifestations, quickness to take offense, mistrust, conquetry, seeking of attention, even in the form of direct psychosis, such as persecution, mania, megalomania, etc. Thus, a concentration upon oneself leads a person away from the world and from God. It becomes chipped off, so to speak, from the general tree trunk of the world, and turns into a shaving curled around an empty spot. The progression of the spiritual illness. Let us try to outline the major stages of the development of pride, from slight self-satisfaction to extreme spiritual darkness and total destruction. And first, it is seen as a frequent attention to oneself, which is almost normal and accompanied by a good mode bordering on flippancy. A person satisfied with himself laughs, lauds, whistles, hums, and stamps the fingers. He likes to appear original, to amuse others with paradox and wit. He exhibits unusual taste. It is conspicuous in food. He willingly gives advice and amicably interferes in the affairs of others. He unconsciously manifests his exclusive interest in himself with the following phrases departing the conversation. No, let me tell you. Or, oh no, I know a better story. Or, I have the habit of. Or, I usually follow the role of. At the same time, he's greatly dependent on the approval of others, depending on which he either blossoms or fades and becomes sore. In general, however, at this stage his mode remains fairly bright. This form of egocentrism is usually characteristic for youth, although it is sometimes seen in adults. As a person is lucky if at this stage he encounters serious concerns, especially for others, marriage, a family, a job, or some project. or if he becomes entrenched with the religious life and attracted by the beautiful spiritual endeavor, realizes a spiritual poverty and becomes desirous of the aid of grace. If this does not occur, the illness progresses further. There appears in him a sincere belief in his own superiority. Often this is expressed through impressible verbosity. What else is verbosity if not, on the one hand, an absence of modesty, and on the other hand, a delight in one's own self? The egotistic nature for verbosity is not listened by incidents of discussion of serious topics. A proud person can easily hold forth on humility and silence, and he can glorify and fasting and debate the merits of good works versus prayer. Self-assurance quickly turns into a passion for ordering others around. Such a person imposes will upon others, but is intolerant of his own will being imposed upon. He takes charge of others' attention, time, efforts, and becomes imprudent and obnoxious. His affairs are important, the affairs of others are for little only. He tries to do everything and interferes in everything. At this stage, the proud person's mode begins to spoil. Means aggressiveness. He naturally meets with opposition and rebuffs. He becomes irritable, stubborn, and peevish. It becomes certain that no one understands him, even his spiritual father. And his conflict with the world increases, and the proud person makes a final choice. I against others, but not yet against God. The soul becomes dark and cold. It becomes the abode of arrogance, contempt, anger, and hate. The mind becomes obscured. The differentiation between good and evil becomes muddled, being replaced by the differentiation between mind and non-mind. He escapes from all obedience, is intolerable to all segments of society. His purpose to propagate his own views, to vanquish and shame others, and he hungrily seeks fame, even notoriety, revenge himself upon the world for its lack of acknowledgement. If he's a monk, he leaves his monastery that will become intolerable to him and seeks his own paths. Occasionally, this force of self-assertion is directed towards material acquisition, a career, or social and political activity. Sometimes, if there is talent, it's directed towards creativity. In such a case, through pushiness, the proud person can even achieve some measure for success. On these same grounds, schemes and heresies are created. Finally, in the last stage, the person separates from God. If previously he sinned out of mischief and mutiny, he now allows himself everything. Sin no longer bothers him, but becomes a habit. If he feels easy about anything at this stage, it is easy relations with the demons and it's easy access to darker passes. The state of the soul is dismal, hopeless, and totally isolated. But at the same time, there is a sincere conviction in the rightness of the path and the feeling of complete safety, despite the fact that he is being rushed on black wings to perdition. In truth, such a state of mind does not differ greatly from madness. At this stage, the proud person lives in a state of total isolation. Look at how he talks and argues. He either does not hear at all what others say to him, or hears only that which coincides with his own views. If something is said to him contrary to his opinions, he becomes angry, and though he were greatly offended, and viciously refutes everything. In those around him, he sees only those qualities that himself had imposed upon them, so that even in his praises he remains proud, self-centered, and impervious to objectivity. Characteristically, the most prevalent forms of psychological illness, megalomania and persecution mania, spring directly from increased self-awareness and are totally unthinkable in individuals who are humble, simple, and self-sacrificing. Even psychiatrists believe that paranoia is based on exaggerated awareness of one's own self, a hostile attitude towards others, a loss of normal ability for adaptation, and irrationality of belief. A classic paranoiac never criticizes himself. In his own eyes, he's always right, and is sharply dissatisfied with the people around him and the conditions of his life. Here is a perfect illustration of the depths of St. John of the Lander's determination. Pride is extreme poverty of the soul. A proud man suffers defeat on all fronts, psychologically, anguish, gloom, and barrenness, morally, solitude, the triumph of love and anger. Physiologically and pathologically, nervous illness and madness. From a theological point of view, the death of the soul preceding physical death, the experience of hell while still in this life. In conclusion, it's natural to pose this question: how should one struggle against this illness and oppose the destruction that threatens those who follow this path? The answer springs from the essence of the question. First of all, humility, then obedience in increments to loved ones, elders, and the laws of the world, objective truth, beauty, and all that is good within us and around us, obedience to the Lord of God. And finally, obedience to the church, its rules, commandments, and mystical sacraments. Achieving this means following that which stands at the beginning of the Christian path. Whosoever wishes to follow me must renounce himself. He must renounce himself and continue renouncing himself every day. Every day he must take on himself his cross, the cross of enduring affronts, blessings of last, suffering sorrows and illnesses, silently accepting abuse, and offering total and unconditional obedience, immediate, voluntary, joyous, fearless, and constant obedience. Then the path into the kingdom of peace and profoundest wisdom, which destroys all passions, shall become open to him. Glory be to our God, who opposes the proud and gives grace to the humble.